Good evening, brothers and sisters, brothers and sisters, bana beso, morena le tlhonolofatse, dumelang. So good to be with you tonight. I am in Gauteng, the province, and not just the city of gold, but the province of gold. And I'm in Gauteng, as I said, and my co-pilot is in Cape Town, in our small studio in Parliament. So, as I give you greetings from cold Gauteng, you can see how dressed I am. I've made sure that every little hole is closed, the wind and the cold cannot come in. I'm comfortable. And I trust that you're also comfortable tonight. So I want to say welcome to everybody. And those who are with us, thank you very much for joining in again tonight. And those who are not with us last week, where were you? Where were you? You have missed a lot, but I'm hoping that you are going to catch up. We have another interesting program for you tonight. But before we get greetings from you, and before I introduce our guest tonight, I want my co-pilot, who is in Parliament, to also say his greetings, and then we'll introduce our guests.
Well, thank you, sir, and good evening and greetings to you from here in Cape Town. I think it's just as cold here in Cape Town as it is up in Johannesburg, so one has to also dress with some layers. But we have, as you indicated, an exciting program. We want to call on all those who have tuned in. Get yourself a cup of coffee, some hot Milo, chocolate, and just come and listen in to what is going to be shared tonight. Call a friend, call a neighbor, get your husband, get your wife if they're not listening, bring your children and let them come and listen into what we as the ACDP will be sharing with you tonight. Bearing in mind that we're living in exciting times, a time where we are still hearing God's word, but these also are exciting times where we are able to do so much for God before his son Jesus comes. So as I say continually, remember that South Africa needs the ACDP and the ACDP needs you. Bless you, bless you, bless you.
Well said, DP, my co-pilot. South Africa needs us all. South Africa needs all the Christians. South Africa needs all those who are washed with the blood of the Lamb, because the Master has a plan for South Africa, a plan that needs those who are washed in the blood of the Lamb to be his feet and hands in some cases, but mainly his feet and their mouth. Okay, he needs your mouth to speak on his behalf. So welcome. Let's hear what you have to say tonight. Who's going to be the first? Melissa Isaiah. She sends greetings to our honorable president, deputy president, and our ACDP family in the mighty name of our Lord Jesus Christ. We are so blessed to have leaders of integrity excited for tonight's live stream.
And our national chairman, Raymond Tlaeli. Good evening, Mr. President, Deputy President, and the awesome ACDP family. Looking forward to another informative discussion with our credible leaders. Good evening, Chairman.
Norama Lee says, good evening, honorable leaders, ACDP family. Good to meet again. Looking forward to hear what our leaders have for us. Good evening, my friend, our member, our servant.
Palesa Yates. Good evening, Palesa. Good evening, Mr. President and DP. Glad you are back. Awesome. Thank you, Palesa.
Moses Powell. Good evening, Mr. President, Deputy, and ACDP family. Good evening, Moses. I pray that the anointing of Moses come upon you, sir.
Ben Solomon. Good evening, my president and our DP. Good evening, Ben. Thank you for being on with us.
Christo Kempfer. Good evening, Reverend Mishwe, DP, and ACDP family. Good evening, Christo.
And then we have Donnie Penton, Dumelang, Sangonani, Molweni, Huyenant. Good evening. All right, I'm glad I was able to repeat all of those. Donnie, bless you.
Hey, Donny, you are a linguist. The Lord bless you. Marianne Lotta, Huyenan Marianne, who handed that in the WhatsApp.
And then our counselor from KZN, Itiquini Jamil Isup. Greetings, Honorable President, Deputy President, and the ACDP family.
Totliso Mputi, Pakati on the inside. Dumela Mwetabili, Dumela Totliso.
Norman Fana Mkonza, our Deputy National Secretary. Shalom, shalom, Honorable President, Honorable DP, and the lovely ACDP Solution family. Shalom, DSP.
I like that, the DSG, ACDP Solution family. Well, the Lord bless you. I'm sure we all feel welcomed, particularly with those nice and kind words that are also embracing our calling to bring forth solutions. Solutions. Never underestimate yourself. Never underestimate yourself. By the grace of God, we are going to bring godly solutions to this beautiful country of ours. Where are we going to start? Tonight, we want to start with the application for registration for an Islamic State of Africa political party. They want to be the political party that will contest the elections and finally, maybe after how many years, I don't know, be the president, but not while we are around. Okay, for sure, not while we are around. They have applied for registration, and a number of people, actually, we are told that the IEC, they say they have never received so many objections and oppositions to the registration of any one political party. Now, there are people who are asking ACDP the question, how can a political party that claims to believe in freedom of religion be opposed to the registration of Islamic State of Africa? Among many who opposed their registration is the ACDP. And our legal advisor and member of parliament, Steve Swart, is the one that made an application on behalf of the ACDP. So I'm going to ask him to tell us why a political party that believes in freedom of religion, like the ACDP, opposes the registration of Islamic State of Africa as a political party. Over to you, my colleague and friend.
Thank you, President DP, and greetings to the ACDP family. And thank you, President, for your warm welcome again. And it is really in Cape Town as well, and as it is in Gauteng. President, without wasting too much time, I formulated and we filed an official complaint with the Electoral Commission in terms of the provisions of the Electoral Commission Act, and in particular, Section 16. And yes, we do stand for freedom of religion, but when it comes to the name Islamic State of Africa, which is sought to be registered, one's got to remember what the origin is. And I set this out in the letter of objection, that this name is associated with extremism and terrorism. And ISIL, which is the Islamic State, which is the original concept, originally called ISIL State, Islamic State of Iraq and Levant. And it was able to conquer vast swathes of territory in Iraq and committed genocide against Yazidi and other religious minorities. So there is a history here of terrorist activities. And wherever Islamic State has operated, it has radicalized its members to perpetrate acts of violence and even genocide. And so when you look at the United States Department 2023 country reports on terrorism, there's a concern, and I set it out in my letter, that even in southern Africa, ISIS-linked fighters continued the operations, and that even the South African government has publicly acknowledged the presence of ISIS sympathizers since 2016. So, President, there's a lot of legal grounds here to lodge an objection. We already know that there are certain parties in Parliament, such as Al-Jamar. We don't have a problem with them. We might have a difference of view on certain of their policies, definitely, but they already operate in Parliament. This is something totally different. And one of the legal arguments I made is that the registration of this party may breach the Protection of Constitutional Democracy Against Terrorist and Related Activities Act. And that is the POC-DATARA Act, which prohibits any support of a listed entity. And the listed entity includes any designated organization. And in this case, we know the United Nations Security Council has designated Islamic State as such. So there are legal challenges as well. We also know that in our submission, the whole alignment with extremism is prevalent, and there is a definite agenda through Africa, and we make out a very compelling argument. We already know that South Africa is on the grey listing in terms of the Financial Action Task Force, and that should this party be allowed to register, it will further aggravate the situation. And when you take it into the concluding remarks that I make, is that this party portrays and could portray a propagation or incitement of violence or hatred because of the association. And they might disassociate themselves from that, but the pure association and the specific choosing of that name, Islamic State of Africa, can cause a perception in terms of Section 16 of the Commission, which states that a party may not be registered if it portrays the propagation or incitement of violence or hatred, or which causes serious offense to any section of the population on the grounds of race, gender, sex, religion. And, President, we argued that this registration of this party, even if they say they're not associated with the original Islamic State, the pure mention and the name of that, in my view, creates serious offense to us as Christians, given what has happened throughout Africa, which has been done, and the terrorism which has been done in the name of the extremist Islamic State. So, President, that was our legal argument, and we fully understand that there are many, many objections, and we'd be very surprised if the IEC does register this, given the fact that the original Islamic State is a designated terrorist organization, both by the United Nations Security Council resolution and in terms of other countries. So that is briefly the input on that as to why we objected to this and why many, many thousands of organizations and people have objected to the proposed registration of Islamic State. And we also know that they are saying they're going to promote Sharia law in South Africa, which we believe would be contrary and is contrary to our Christian beliefs. Thank you, President.
Let me read from a newspaper from Natal, KZN, called The Witness. It says, a controversial bid by Durban businessman Fahad Humar to register a political party that openly advocates for Sharia law has sparked a wave of objections from political parties, religious leaders, and civil society groups who argue the party's ideology threatens constitutional values and could damage South Africa's global standing. Now, this is a newspaper called The Witness. If you Google search, you are in Gauteng or another province, you can find this article yourself. Now, they openly advocate for Sharia law. Sharia law is a Islamic legal system, very, very strict legal system. Now, to give you an idea, if you have Sharia law in South Africa and they find you a woman walking in the streets with your head uncovered, you will be beaten up. Some of you will be forced to wear their traditional attire and leave out only your eyes to see, because your flesh must not be seen in the street. So those who are wearing pants, short pants, you have to make sure that we don't have Sharia law in South Africa. Because if we do, then you must throw away, or give away, sell, or even burn those shorts that you have. Now, that is Sharia law. And this group of people is not shying away. They are not hiding the fact that they want Sharia law in South Africa and ultimately in Africa. There are a number of Muslims we know who say they don't believe in Sharia law. They're democratic, because Sharia law doesn't agree with democracy. Because with democratic system, people choose. You choose what you want to wear, you choose where you want to go, but not with Sharia law. Okay? So we want to encourage those who agree that we don't need Sharia law in South Africa to rise up and support the ACDP and speak out, being careful, obviously, being careful what you say. But it's important for people to know the ACDP does not agree with Sharia law. As a result, we don't agree with the registration of this Islamic State of Africa. Now, Steve, thank you very much for giving us that. Okay, I'm drawn to what Tlotliso was written. Tlotliso Mputi says, we all know, and it's always been clear, that women and children are in danger if Sharia law is pushed by a suspected terrorist. Okay? He says, we all know that women and children are in danger if Sharia law is pushed. Okay? That's why for our women's protection, our children's protection, let's say we don't want Sharia law not under our watch. Now, while we have Steve with us, Steve is one of the MPs that went to Israel. You need to tell us what caused the backlash. Because when they came back, Steve and the other MPs, hey, it was like they went abroad to kill some people. People were upset with them. People were condemning them. Well, we stood up, I stood up in Steve's defense. I'll talk about it later. But let Steve tell us first. What happened? Okay, maybe firstly, the team you went with abroad, who were they? And are they under the same pressure you are under? And what happened? Why do you think there's so much pressure and unhappiness that you went to Israel with this group on a fact-finding mission? Some MPs are saying, what fact-finding mission? There's no fact-finding thing that anybody from, particularly the legislature, should go to Israel to support. Okay, but now let Steve speak for himself. Sir, you were courageous.
Thank you. Thank you, President. And may I also just thank you and the party for the support, and particularly you in the press statement that you issued. It's very important to say that I went with the blessing of the party, but I was in my personal capacity, and that we went on what the President has indicated, was a fact-finding mission, but also to visit the holy sites in the Holy Land and to pray there and to see the impact of the October 7th attack by Hamas. And it was actually heart-rending when you spoke to survivors, when we visited, just looking at the name of the Kibbutz Kfar Azar, where 62 people were massacred, 19 were taken hostage. We also went to the Nova Music Festival, where there were 4,000 youngsters, 400 were massacred. And that was part of the 1,200 people that were massacred. That's the biggest massacre since the Holocaust of Israelis and other nationalities. Brutally murdered, with 251 hostages taken. And the ACDP has been on record as saying, we are also saddened by the loss of innocent Gazan lives, but Hamas started this. So we were also joined, the group that went consisted of mainly members of parliament that went in their personal capacities from the Democratic Alliance. You can see the picture there, from the Patriotic Alliance and from ourselves, as well as certain church leaders and other members of NGOs, such as the International Christian Embassy. And it was under the banner of the South African Friends of Israel. It was sponsored trip, but we went independently. We went in our personal capacities using personal passports. And why has it caused such an outrage? Because I think what people are concerned about, certain South Africans are promoting a certain narrative. And it's almost, in their view, this virtual reality of what they have created in Israel, about Israel. And you, President, I want to just commend you again. You have consistently said that you, as a victim of apartheid, there is no apartheid in Israel. You've traveled there regularly. You were a victim of apartheid, and you find it incredulous that there should be that narrative. And so as soon as you go there and you start defeating that narrative, obviously when you come back, there is a lot of backlash. And so what I've been saying is we went and we saw, and I've traveled a lot through Israel. I've met with many, many people, and it is very important as well to be able to say categorically, how dare anyone say that I, as a Christian believer, cannot go to the Holy Land to see for myself and to pray in the holy sites, to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, as we are commanded to do. And President, despite all the pain and anguish of the survivors that we saw, and those that have lost loved ones, and those that still have got hostages, and again cognizant of this, of the suffering of innocent people in Gaza, there was this amazing sense. There's no sense of hatred, as one would experience, one sees from the other side, from Hamas' side, who've said they will do it again given the opportunity, and they want to wipe out totally and wipe out the Jewish people. And what I saw, President, was people that want peace, that want peaceful coexistence. It's so important. And I commend you again and the leadership of the ACDP since its inception, that we understand Genesis 12:3, how important it is that there's a blessing on those that stand with Israel, and there's a curse on those that curse Israel. So we see this unbelievable pressure, and I thank you, President and DP, for your support, to pray for me as well. The ludicrous fact now is that there have been criminal charges laid, and we'll deal with that. We'll deal with that against all those MPs that have gone. But we see MPs that are being accosted, that are being verbally abused, that their meetings have been disrupted. But we are strong. We are very strong. And I think the more and more MPs and people that go to Israel to see for themselves, the more and more this narrative will be defeated, that Israel is this terrible, terrible state. And we have right from the word go. We've demanded the release of the hostages. We have said we distance, we do not support the court case against Israel. And it was an honor to be in Israel again as a believer. And nobody will detract us, President, and I know you and the DP and others, from going to Israel, from walking where Jesus walked, where he ministered, and praying in the holy places. We prayed at the Garden of Gethsemane. We prayed at the Western Wall. We were on the Sea of Galilee. It is the most unbelievable experience to be in Israel. Our whole faith, our whole heritage comes from Israel. And so we will. And we encourage people to go to Israel, And there is a very special anointing, a special sense of a homecoming when we go to Israel. And so we continue to stand with Israel and the Jewish people at this time of war, praying for the release of the hostages, praying for peace, and praying for all those innocent Gazans as well that are struggling and suffering at this time. Thank you, President.
And thank you, Steve, for that everybody right to live. Every nationality has the right to live. Now, when you have people who claim to be democratic, and they say, while we agree that everybody has the right to live, but they support people who say Israel must not have the right to live. They don't have the right to exist within safe and secure borders. I would say that is unfair. This is the prominent reason, besides what the scriptures teach, why I personally and my family, and I'm glad that even the ACDP supports Israel. Why? Because there are people who say we want to remove them from the face of the earth. Now, those who are watching who might say we are against Israel because of what they are doing. Now, remember there are politicians who say we support a two-state solution. Israel existing besides Palestinians. An Israel state existing next to, side by side with Palestinian state. The Palestinians don't want that. I mean, if you want to, if there is an interest, we will tell you and give you opportunities. Where Yasser Arafat was saying, sign so that you have your own state. He refused. He declined. Okay, he declined. Why? Because their intention is not to allow Israel to exist. Some of those with inside information say the reason they don't want to support and to sign to have this two-state solution, they will be legitimizing the state of Israel that they don't want. Okay, so please be informed. Don't be emotional. I know that the pictures they see of bombs and Israeli army going into Gaza, those pictures are heartbreaking. And to see children who are hurt, children who are killed, that is heartbreaking. We feel sorry and we don't agree with the killing of children. All right? In order not to lose time, maybe let me leave it here. But the fact is, we have seen papers, we have heard announcements made that we are after a person in your area, please move away because we are going to target that place. They do that. And people ask the question, which army in the whole world does that? Not even America does that. If they want to destroy, they just destroy without warning those that are innocent. But the Jewish army, they do that. They say they are the only army in the whole world that's doing that. But their enemies obviously won't give them credit for it. Let me just read our statement of support for Steve's visit to Israel. The African Christian Democratic Party fully supports the recent fact-finding trip by Steve Swart MP and others to Israel. From the onset, I would like to confirm that Mr. Steve Swart obtained our permission to join the fact-finding mission consisting of some MPs and religious leaders to Israel. We note the objections and condemnations of some individuals who have forgotten that the late former president of South Africa, Nelson Mandela, used to say, "Nobody should choose friends for us except ourselves." Unlike other political parties and organizations such as Hamas that are calling for annihilation of Israel, the ACDP believes that all human beings have the right to live, including Jews in general and Israelis in particular. The ACDP will never allow the haters of Israel to attempt to choose friends for us and deny us the right to visit the Holy Land. All right, maybe let me stop here to save time. Friends, you have the Constitution of South Africa gives you the right to choose. The Constitution of South Africa gives us the right to freedom of movement, things we did not have under apartheid. If you would be found in an area you were designated to live, or you were designated not to live, you'd be arrested. So it was in that context that when the National Party government criticized Mr. Mandela for having friends such as Yasser Arafat, Muammar Gaddafi, and others, and Mandela said, no. If you have problems with them, I don't have problems with them myself. I'm their friend, they are my friends. And I choose who should be your friends. And he said the ANC also chooses, and they have the right to choose who their friends should be. So as you are listening, friends, don't be intimidated by the haters of Israel. You have the right to choose. And I want to say to you, choose correctly according to Scripture. Genesis 12:3, the Lord says there, I will bless those who bless Israel and curse those who curse Israel. If you don't want to be cursed, align yourself with Scriptures. Align yourself with Scriptures. Okay, now we're going to move to our next guest. There's a young lady with us tonight by the name of Andile Mtombeni. Andile is about to make history. This young ACDP leader has been part of an organization called Waidua. Now, he will explain to us what this organization is about. This organization will be Young Democrats, Democratic Union Association. They will be having fresh elections. The previous term, she was the deputy president. And guys, obviously, in the North who are mainly Muslim are not used to women leading them. So she sent me a letter where they tried to request that she be disqualified and not become a president. They were threatened. They were intimidated. They are intimidated because they know her. Now, this young lady has been nominated and canvassed by a number of people in this organization who said to her, you need to please contest the elections because you are dynamite. We want you to become our president. And she was approached by the opposition who said to her, don't stand. They tried to discourage her. She stood her ground until finally the man she was going to contest, maybe strategically, they substituted that man with a woman member of parliament because that man could not imagine losing to a woman. So changes have been made. But now this lady, there are two candidates to be the president of Waidua. The first one, after the screening, who was allowed to go through, is Marwa El Ansari from Morocco. Marwa El Ansari from Morocco. Challenged by Andile Joyce Mtombeni from the ACDP in South Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, before I introduce her and we hear what she has to say, what she thinks about this nomination, I'm going to ask you to please stand with us and pray for her. For protection, number one, and secondly, for wisdom. Ask Bafana that has been to such countries in the north. It's not easy. It's not easy. Let me leave it there. But we want to pray for Andile. We prayed much for her this past week, or 2 weeks ago rather, when we had prayer for the nation in Vosloorus. And she came, we prayed for her. So Andile, thank you for coming. We are going to continue praying for you even while you are gone. So it's my pleasure, Andile, to welcome you on this program. Please tell the people who are watching who you are and why you are contesting this position, and in Morocco, when there will be few Christians who will be supporting you. Over to you, Andile.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. I hope everyone can hear me. I hope I'm audible. Good evening to our Honorable Mr. President. Good evening to the Deputy President, Wayne Train. Good evening to the Member of Parliament, Steve Swartz, and all the ACDP family watching this evening. My name is Andile Mtombeni, and as President has introduced me, I am a member of the Youth Foundation. I represent the Office of International Relations in the national structure, interim structure of the Youth Foundation. And really, thank you so much, Mr. President, for the opportunity that you have given to me this evening to come and talk about what young people in the ACDP are up to, not only nationally, but also internationally in the continent and globally, because ACDP is not just a domestic name or a domestic political party. It is an African Christian Democratic Party, and that African indeed speaks for itself. We are out there, leaving the footprints of ACDP and the core values that we stand and believe in. So I joined the party 6 years ago, 2019. And as soon as I had joined the party, I had been at university at the time, and I just finished varsity. And as a young person looking to establish myself politically, academically, I was, introduced to the party through Honorable Cheryl Dudley, who was a member of parliament back then. So when she left me in the party to take the baton forward. And I gladly accepted, because for me, politics is not a leisure, it's a calling. I believe that, God calls us into politics the same way he called Moses and all the other people. I believe the same for myself in this space. And as soon as I joined the party, I was thrown into this organization, Young Dua. At the time, the organization was being revived continentally. It had died at some point, disappeared. But in 2019, it was being revived from the trenches. So they were looking for members to participate, young members from the different political parties that subscribed to the Democracy Union of Africa continentally. So as such, they were looking for a young woman and a young man who represent the ACDP from South Africa, together with our sister party, the IFP. And I so happened to be in the vicinity at the time. I just arrived, and immediately Cheryl was like, I think you'll be the best young woman to go out there and represent the party. So I said, you know what, when God opens the door, who am I to argue? So I just took the opportunity and ran with it. And I've since stood and fought the good fight of faith for the past 5-6 years, really holding on, carrying the banner and being a flag bearer for the ACDP in this organization, in this structure continentally. So who is this YDUA, the Young Democracy Union of Africa, with the support of the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung Foundation, which is a German foundation. It recognizes the role of young people and the role that young people have in playing and shaping the continent's democratic future. We speak about the demographic dividend in Africa, in particular, that over 60% of the population in Africa is young people under the ages of 35, if not 25. So we can see that we are a very, very young continent. So it is imperative that we get young people empowered, we get them engaged in electoral processes. So Young DUA is a consortium that brings together these young people who are interested in politics, but specifically aligned to center-right political ideologies like ourselves. And as the ACDP, we subscribe to that. So I represent the ACDP there. So now we meet every year to congregate in a once-a-year conference that is funded by the German sponsors. In these conferences, when we gather, we talk about our elections. We encourage each other as young people, what works, what is not working. We network. We use the opportunity to network and stand in solidarity with one another. Some of our young people in the space, we've seen them rise to positions of power, become members of parliament. Some of them, we've seen them rise through the ranks, become youth leaders in their parties. So really, the empowerment that they're receiving in the consortium is helping the young people to shape their voices, and so that they can also rise and see them being the leaders, not only of tomorrow, but of today. So now, biannually, we meet to change the board, the executive board, and the leadership of the consortium. And over the past 6 years, we've had 3 biannual conferences where these are electoral conferences. And the first electoral conference that we had in Grand Bassam in Ivory Coast, Ghana took the leadership banner, so they took the presidency, and they ran for the 2-year term. And then after that, they requested that they renew their term and continue for the next 2 years again. So they did that. And so you've seen that West Africa has been dominating the leading of this consortium. Then soon after that, in 2023, we met in Ethiopia for the second electoral process, and the leadership moved from West Africa. It went to Uganda in East Africa. And in that particular conference, I vied for the vice presidency because for me, I didn't want to jump straight into the presidential seat. I first wanted to assess what it's like to be in the board, what it's like to run the governance of this organization so that I can understand better. So in the past 2 years, I've been serving in the organization as the vice president. I was duly nominated and voted for as vice president, representing SADC, representing the ACDP in the executive board. Now, this year, we are going to Morocco, actually this month, to have our biannual conference for the election round. And I decided that I'm going to run for president this time around. I said, you know what? In 3 years' time, I'm going to be 35 years old. I just turned 32 just this past weekend. So I don't want to be that young person who is hogging up space when I'm old and older than my age. I want to leave gracefully when it is time for me to leave. So I said, okay, now more than ever is the time for me to take up this space, because I've seen over the years what is working, what is not working, where the challenges and the gaps are. And I believe that before I leave and leave other young ACDP members in the consortium, when I exit in the next 2 years, I need to leave them in an organization that is functional and that governance is fully, properly functional as well. So I said, I'm going to run for president. And of course, intimidation came, as the president has said. But, we are fearfully and wonderfully made. We do not fear no man. God does not respect of persons. And I think I was intimidated also because I'm the only one who's openly Christian in the organization. I stand for my Christian values. Over the 6 years, people have known that Andile is a Christian. She does not drink. She does not do certain things. And I think over the years, people have come to respect me for the core values that I stand for, and I do not waver, because that is what and who we are in the party, and that is what we are taught by our leaders, the president, the vice president. We stand for what we believe in. So people have come to respect that, and now people want me to take the helm of the leadership. And of course, I was challenged, but I said, we do not fear, we do not retreat, we do not surrender. And through the support of the president, they came through, they prayed for me. Last week, I sent through my nomination form. So now I'm in the campaign season, and on the 20th, I'll be traveling to Morocco. On the 26th, we're having our election, and I'm believing God that I'm going to come back as the first SADC regional representative to take the presidency and bring it home to South Africa for the first time. Thank you so much, President.
I give Madam President, high five. The Lord bless you. It shall be so. It shall be so. It shall be so. Let the impossible happen.
Amen.
Impossible happen. Should I say beat a Muslim in his background, in his homeland? Yeah, why not? Okay, Madam President, we are going to prophetically refer to you as Madam President. All right, so the Lord bless you. It's me, and I would encourage you guys to be positive when you think about this position she has been offered, and I believe offered by the Lord. We need to stand with her, encourage her, pray for her, okay, all the time, so that she will have wisdom. The Lord will protect her from, she will be in a different country, not the first time, obviously, but that the Lord will protect her and help her to guard her mouth, say the right things at the right time. And the fewer words you have, the better, because the scriptures advise us, be quick to listen, but slow to speak. So that's my advice to you, Madam President-elect, and it shall be well. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Back home to my co-pilot. So we are going to have my co-pilot. Let's close. Our last item should be about the mess we are in our municipalities. Municipalities in South Africa crumbling, almost becoming bankrupt. And in Vosloorus, I'm speaking from Vosloorus, from Thursday last week to yesterday, they did not have water. Some areas were served by tankers, but when I first had my chance to stand before the congregation, my first question was, did you wash? And they laughed. Okay, did you wash? But it's because of municipalities that are dysfunctional. So the DP is here. He's going to give us the figures. He's a man of the figures. Okay, he was a teacher of arithmetics. Okay, he likes figures. Okay, tell us, what is the percentage of failing municipalities that we have in the country? How many municipalities in the country? How many are failing? How many are just on the brink? Please give us information, and thank you so much for the information.
Well, thank you, President. So in the time that we have left, let me try and get through as much as possible. Very clearly, the Auditor General's report that was presented on the state of our municipalities is not a pleasant one. Last week, the Auditor General came before one of the parliamentary committees to present her report, financial report for the 23-24 financial year on the state of our municipalities. Some of the things that the Auditor General has said is that it's pretty much a stuck record. So in other words, from the previous year, there hasn't been much improvement. And in fact, there possibly could have even been some regression. One of the other things that the Auditor General said is that it is time to hold the mayors, the speakers, and council members to account for municipal failures. And President, I must add that when we, in the previous dispensation here at Parliament, we applauded when the Auditor General was given some newfounded powers. These newfounded powers would be to hold officials to account should they misrepresent the municipality and not uphold your Municipal Finance Management Acts, your Systems Structures Act, Supply Chain Management. These are some local government legislation that governs your local municipalities. And so the Auditor General has, in terms of the Auditor General Act, has now these newfound powers to actually hold municipal officials as well as office bearers to account. Should there be misrepresentations, should they also be found to have fraudulently taken money that does not belong to them, fruitless, wasteful, irregular expenditure, and all of these terms that the Auditor General uses with regards to municipalities. Now, we are saying as the ACDP that the Auditor General needs to utilize those newfound powers. To date, we found very few office bearers, very few officials who have actually been brought to book. And the Auditor General is now saying it's time to hold the mayors, the speakers, and the council members to account for municipal failures. We are saying to the Auditor General, less talk, more action. All right, so President, if we look at the actual the Auditor General's findings, it's certainly not a pleasant report. We have some 257 municipalities in South Africa. Of the 257 municipalities, only 41 municipalities received a clean audit. That in terms of percentages is just 16%. Only 16% of our 257 municipalities received a clean audit. In terms of unqualified audits with findings, we've had 99 municipalities, or 39%. So if we look at the percentage, that's a total of 54%. So 46% of our municipalities are, in other words, in a serious state, or 46% of our municipalities actually have severe problems. The Auditor General has found that the number of municipalities that received a qualified report with findings, 35%, or 90 municipalities. In other words, these municipalities presented some misrepresentations. They did not adhere to the local government legislation that is there. Either your MFMA, Supply Chain Management, your Systems or your Structures Act. And so they flouted these particular regulations, and there's 90 municipalities, or some 35% of the 257 municipalities that we have. Six of the 257 received an adverse report. Now, that's one of your the second to last worst, if I can put it that way, report that you can actually get in terms of the hierarchical order from unqualified or clean audit, unqualified with findings, and then qualified with findings. Then you have adverse. And so six municipalities, or 2%, received adverse with findings reports. And then one of the worst also, President, is the number that have received disclaimers, and that is possibly the worst that you can get. Here, almost everything is going wrong. And so in these particular municipalities, there's 11 of them, or 4%, with disclaimers with findings. But what we also find, President, is that the Auditor General has also said that here is the regression. So when I started off, I said that, they said it's pretty much kind of like a stuck record, but here's a regression. And one of the regressions is the number of municipalities with outstanding audits. In other words, they haven't even bothered to submit any financials to the Auditor General, which is a legal requirement in terms of the Constitution of South Africa and the legislation that is there, which governs municipalities. Last year, or in the previous financial year, only one municipality did not submit their financials. In the previous financial year, the 23-24 financial year, it is now 10. 10 municipalities did not even bother to submit their finances to the Auditor General. So we're in a situation where we have close on to 50% of our municipalities that are teetering on bankruptcy. What the Auditor General would call no longer going concerns. I think I gave the figure of some 46% of our municipalities that are facing challenges. What we're finding also, President, is that previously your 8 metros, the 8 metros were amongst the best performing of all of your municipalities. But right now we also have municipalities, only one of the 8 metros was able to receive a clean audit with no findings from the Auditor General at all. Only one metro. And so this is a problem where even your metros with huge budgets, I'm talking about budgets of between 50 to possibly 80 billion rand per annum, these huge budgets, and yet they are not able to obtain clean audits. So one of the things that the Auditor General has indicated is that the failure in our municipalities is characterized by poor governance, it's characterized by financial mismanagement and declining service delivery. What are and I just want to perhaps close with this, President, what are the consequences? What are the consequences of these failures? Well, the consequences has this impact on residents. It leads to health hazards where the sewer system doesn't work. Piped water, President, that you spoke of doesn't reach our taps. Your electricity reticulation system is not being maintained. And even though Eskom is generating sufficient electricity, the electricity doesn't reach your homes because the municipalities are not doing the maintenance, the proper maintenance on our power substations within the areas. And so it presents health hazards, safety risks, and an overall decline of a quality of life for residents. Secondly, there's the economic impact. Poorly managed infrastructure and unreliable service delivery negatively impacts economic growth and investment, particularly in areas with a high concentration of your SMMEs. And so there's an economic impact when municipalities fail to work. And then there's increased debt and financial instability. Municipalities face financial difficulties, and what they do is they then pass this on to the ratepayers. And so you see above inflation linked increases in terms of tariffs. Your electricity tariff goes up double digits, your water tariffs goes up double digits, rates goes up double digits, sewer tariffs goes up double digits. And so this is what they call administered costs, which drives up inflation and makes South Africans poorer. And then finally, President, let me conclude with this. And I know that time is up. There's basically the erosion of public trust. And right now, many citizens in our municipalities are saying that the municipalities and those that have been entrusted in those municipalities have failed us. And very clearly, it is time for change. We need to ensure that in those positions of authority in our municipalities, the 257 across South Africa, that we fill those municipalities with ACDP members of integrity, members who fear God, and members and those leaders who understand servant leadership. President, thank you, sir, and let me stop there.
DP, thank you very much. Our time is up, and next week, among other things, we'll tell you what we think is a solution to the mess that our municipalities are in, and what are we going to do to solve the problem. Okay, what are we going to do? But we'll talk about that next week. From my side and from many viewers, Thank you very much for tuning in tonight. God bless you. Sleep well. Until next week, same place, same time. God bless from me. And my deputy will also say his goodbyes until next week.
Well, let me shortly say thank you so much for joining in. God bless. Good night. South Africa needs the ACDP, and the ACDP needs you. Good night.
Good night. God bless.